All right, so welcome to day one to help you get your first pickleball client. And this is all about super high performance mindset. And a lot of this actually is taken from my bigger program, Super High Performance Formula. And also, I'm going to give you access to another 7-day challenge if you actually need more of this. But I want to cover some of the fundamentals. And hopefully what this is going to do, for some of you, is actually going to start to create a bit of an unblock. Because Tony Robbins will say this, and I traveled the world with Tony, and I spent many years in his Platinum Mastermind, which is it's 80% thinking, 20% strategy. And so the first element on this mind map, it says you versus strategy. And so I want to ask you a question, which is, if you're really honest with yourself, based upon where you are right now in your pickleball business journey, what do you feel is the main blocker to your success? Is it strategic? Is it go and do this, for example, on Facebook and post this? Okay, great, I've got the clarity. Or is it your own mind, your own thinking, your own level of confidence, your own self-sabotage, your own self-esteem? Because if I'm being honest, over the years, that has been me. And especially when I got my condition, I was unable to walk. It massively impacted my thinking. It massively impacted my self-confidence. And here's the very important thing to understand when you start a business, because you may be watching this having not had a business, which is when you do anything new, it's going to be scary. But also, and going back to this question, it's very important for us to know, actually, the main blocker for me is me. Because what that does, first of all, is it's taking responsibility for it versus avoiding it and then blaming the strategy. Because one thing I can tell you, which is when people, and this is just from coaching people and consulting people over the years, which is I put together mindset trainings because I would consult people and give them the strategy, but they weren't doing it. And it wasn't that the information was wrong. It was that there was a mindset block, a mindset issue that needed to be dealt with, or there was a need for extra accountability. All right. And we'll talk about accountability later. So first of all, write that down. Is it like pick one? Like, what's the main block? Is it strategic? Is it like a business strategy, a marketing strategy, sales strategy? Or is it really, like, if I'm really honest, it's me. Now, if you feel like it's you versus the strategy, then my recommend, because now it's like this versus that, right? If you're the person that's like, yeah, it's me, I would highly recommend you going through All Fired Up, which I'll talk about later, which I'm just going to give you access to. Because what that's going to do is it's going to go into a little bit of a deeper dive. Okay, but I'm going to touch on some of that stuff today. Because when you start to deal with those things, once you get some training around your own thinking and the other things I'm going to be covering a little bit today in a deeper way, what you'll notice is that when you do get given strategy, then you'll actually follow through on it. Because if you don't address that now, what's going to happen is this, and it's very problematic. You'll go through the training, you will want to action it, or you'll be skeptical on it, and then you won't do it, and then you will blame the training when it wasn't actually the training, it was something else, but you didn't address that. And then what will happen is you'll go into a cycle, and then you won't maximize what you've actually come here for, because if you've landed here, if you started this challenge, it's because you do have a desire, all right? So very, very important to have that awareness. So next is fears, okay? So fear, and I say this, which is it stands for false evidence appearing real. It's actually a certain energy that we have, all right? And so I'll be covering state in a moment, but as an exercise, I want you to, first of all, write down what your fears are. Because if I'm working with someone around their mindset because their business isn't moving forward, one of the first things I'm going to do is, first of all, understand them, help them to understand themselves. So, for example, a legitimate fear for someone new who's starting business might be, I'm afraid that people won't pay me. Or, I'm afraid that when I present my price, that people will say no. Or, I'm afraid that people won't enjoy my lessons, right? We've got fear of failure, and then we've got fear of success. So it's very important for you to understand, what are your top 3 fears? And do you lean more towards fear of failure or fear of success? Right? I'm worried that this isn't going to work out. Or I'm worried that it is actually going to work out, but then maybe I'll lose people if I start working with people. Like a legitimate fear that I had when I first became a coach, and I, grew a company, was able to move to the States. I grew it to $1 million in 18 months. But I remember prior to growing the company, I got stuck growing the business because I was so fearful that other mentors out there would see what I was doing and they wouldn't like it. And of course, this was just irrational in my own mind, but I had to get that block dealt with because it was causing me to procrastinate. And so fear becomes a form of self-sabotage for a lot of us. We have this fear and it blocks us. And so then we don't take action. The reason why this is called super high performance is because performance is about action, and fear stops us from taking action. So if you go, as I mentioned earlier, if you go through this training and then I give you something to do and then you go to do it, but then you hesitate, like go and do a post, for example, or go and be on video as an example. Okay, Simon asked me to do it. Boom, I go to do it. I freeze. We have to become aware of that. Okay, it's fear of rejection. Someone's going to see it. What if I coach and I'm coaching someone, and then people are seeing me coaching someone and they start calling me out. All of this is our own thinking, and it's our own focal process. So when you write down what your fears are, what it's important to do is start to actually stack things against that. And actually, I say about putting the legs under the table and making something stronger. So for example, if you've got a fear that, nobody will pay me, you want to come up with the 4 legs of the table of reasons why they want to. Because they resonate with you, because they want to actually reward you for your time. And so in fear, what we do is we get stuck and we get hyper-focused on everything that's going to go wrong, but we stop to consider all of the upsides and the positives of what we're going to get for it. Okay? So 2 exercises for you. Identify what your top 3 fears are, and then flip those around and then put some positives and start to actually work with your own thinking. All right? So the next part of mindset, and actually this came up for one of my clients, was the question of, am I ready yet? Am I ready to be helping people? Okay. I think there's 2 aspects to this personally, which is like, actually, we really aren't ready. And I think I'm not ready, but I actually am, because when I get into it, I'll be fine. And I think that a lot of fear, anxiety comes up because we actually don't give ourselves credit for what we can deal with in the moment with situations. You can actually deal with certain stuff in the moment and you'll be fine. But we have these irrational fears that come up, like I'm not ready to do it. Now, what is somebody that actually isn't ready? And you might be here, I'll be honest with you, and you actually might not be ready yet. And that could be legitimate, right? Because maybe you've not done a test run, right? And you need to do that. Maybe you, actually need to go through a certification and you've not done that. and you're jumping in too early, that could be legitimate, right? It's not going to be for most people who are here. But I'll be honest with you, if I was having a conversation with 100 pickleball instructors or coaches, the reality is there are going to be a number of people that I would say to them, I don't think that you're ready to be paid yet. I think that you're ready to be doing some free sessions with people and see how the results are and see how you feel, right? But the reality is that some people won't be ready, right? So you need to have a check-in with yourself personally to become aware of, is this actually reality, or is it actually just your own mind? And the reality is that you are ready, but you have some irrational fears that when you actually go and, for example, work with someone, they're going to actually give you positive feedback. And a great signal to know, am I ready, which hopefully this will be of use to you, is people's reactions to you. You know, when I first started as a personal trainer and I got back from Cyprus, I had so much enthusiasm. What would happen is you go into the gym and then you do what's called inductions. And so those inductions is you would show people around the gym, and then you did a mini session with them. And you're getting signals from people that this is great. And so a reason that why someone might not be ready is maybe you're working with people and you're not getting a positive reaction. People are not improving. And so then moving to paid is going to be potentially too early. However, if you have been working with a few people, you've, for example, having a friend who hasn't played, do a coaching session with them, and they're like, oh my God, that was awesome. Get feedback. Feedback gives you signals on whether you're ready to be paid and how they progress. And a big thing that I focus on in my trainings is results, right? I'm not here to put a bunch of people through this challenge and then not get results. I want you to get results, okay? And so this challenge has come at a time when I'm doing it based upon a system that already works with paid clients, right? It's not just something that I'm making up. And so I knew I was ready to do this training because I'd already gotten some results. And so for anybody who's new to a business, the first way to build up confidence and build up revenue to then scale is to get some results. And we always do that when we're starting something new. Let's just take a random other industry. Let's take a photographer, okay? A photographer, somebody who's taking pictures, but they don't take very good pictures, and then they want to do a $2,500 wedding. I would say that someone who has bought a camera, and this is not someone who's a great photographer. This is someone who's bought a camera that wants to learn. They're not ready to be paid $2,500 for a wedding. It's just, they're not ready. However, that person buys the camera. They go and do some trainings. They go and learn how to get great shots. And then maybe they go and do some shoots. And then maybe they are a second photographer for a wedding. And they take shots to back up an existing photographer. But if those can then stand on their own, right, and the person's happy with them, boom, there's a signal that that person is ready to do their own. See, there's a process to that. So it's very important to, again, be self-aware, and I'm sure that if you don't feel ready, you will soon, by some of the things I'm going to teach you during the training. Let's talk about state. Now, I mentioned this in the welcome, and actually this is definitely applicable to you and also your clients. And I've spoken a little bit about this on the Picklepreneurs podcast. And this also ties into fear. It's very important to understand that you could be in a mental state, whereby you're taking action, you're in flow, things are happening, but then something happens personally. Maybe there's a breakup, or maybe someone says something to do and it alters your state. What does state mean? It means the state of mind that we're in. It's also the energy that we're in. Think about it. You're going about your day. Things are fine. And then suddenly you hear some bad news. What happens is something shifts your energy and your state changes. So when you're going through this training, it's important to understand what state of mind are you in. When you're on the pickleball court, think about the state you're in when you win. Think about the state that you're in when you lose. Think about the state that you're in when someone gives you a compliment and says, oh my God, you've improved. It alters your state of mind, your state of thinking. And then what most likely happens is during games, or maybe you play tournaments or whatever, you're riding off of this energy. So when it comes to starting a business, it is so important that you understand state of mind and also how to change that state. And during the All Fired Up training, which you'll also have access to in the community area, if you're watching this on YouTube, you want to use those meditations to alter your state of thinking, right? Going in, feeling stressed out, feeling burnt out, close your eyes, center yourself, connect with your heart, boom, you feel a different energy. That impacts your day. It impacts your sales. It impacts your content. It impacts the way that you think, whether you can do something or not. It could potentially impact whether you think that you're ready or not. Because on some days you could be like, I'm ready, I'm amazing. And then suddenly one person says something and then it sends you off. It's very important to notice also how long that stays in a spiral for, a negative spiral. And I'll talk about more on this when it comes to the sales training. Because, for example, someone could get a no, do you want to invest in this? No, they take that as rejection. They may be down for a week. I can remember when I first started doing sales, it took me a lot to get back from sales rejection, right? So state is very important for yourself, and the state of which you are in also impacts your clients. Because if you're in a positive state, if you're in a confident state, that's going to roll off to them. If you're feeling insecure, if your physiology is off, they're going to suddenly be off. Have you ever been in an open play game? When you think about when you first started playing and someone said something to you that was maybe well-intended, but they said it at the wrong time and it impacted the rest of your game. Well, what happened? It changed your state, okay? So there's a meditation on the Picklepreneurs podcast around actually pickleball state change you might want to check out. But you understanding that you are in a certain state right now, and in growing and scaling your business, it's very important to be aware that you can shift your state, particularly in times when you're doubting yourself, when you're hesitating, when you're feeling a lack of confidence. And that imposter syndrome is elevated when you have not got a client yet. It's just fact, okay? Now, some of you, what's going to happen is you get that first client and then you'll be off, and you just need some optimization. You need some help with leverage, grouping people together to scale the business in a massive upward trajectory. And for some of you, you don't have that motivation and drive. You just want to get a couple of clients, side kind of gig, and that's totally fine. But confidence builds from action. It does not come from just information. You're going to get a state change from watching this because you may be inspired or motivated, or there's a light bulb moment because I said something that resonates with you. But real intrinsic confidence comes from doing, and then the positive feedback that we're getting, and then that builds something up which is more as a sustainable confidence that we build upon. Okay? But we've got to go into courage throughout the journey. Right? And courage means speaking to someone. Courage means asking to be paid. Courage means being willing to step on that court and coach somebody versus play yourself. So I commend you on coming on the journey, right? Okay, so we've spoken about state. So also, what is the best and fastest way to change that? It's always going to be through meditation and breathing. Because what happens is when, for example, if you get anxiety, your breathing changes. Right? But if I now close my eyes, take a nice deep breath, I'm now closing out everything from the outside. I'm coming inward. I'm centering myself. I'm taking that 18-inch drop between my mind and my heart. And in my heart space, I'm more intuitive. Like I don't have a script from what I'm saying. I'm just pulling from what I know, just from bullet points, right? Now, some people, they have to transition and get to that point. I've been doing this for a long time. So there's that muscle that we develop, and that muscle will be developed the more you do something new. For example, working with someone one-on-one, working in a group. There's phases that we go through. Okay, let's talk about the next one, which is, of course, incredibly important, which is commitment. So there is taking part and there is fully committed. Hopefully you've come into this training not just because you're curious, but you are committed to an outcome. And what will happen is that if you don't commit to that outcome, you won't overcome some of the other challenges that come by. If there's just a soft commitment where it's just like, yeah, I'm curious, I want to dabble, that's very different if you're like, okay, this is my goal and this is what I'm shooting for. Again, it's a high performance, super high performance mental trait. So I'd encourage you to really question your level of commitment before actually you go any further, right? And the same goes also for the people that you work with. Because when I work with someone, if someone wants to work with me, okay, personally, and they're going to actually invest money with me, which they have spent their hard time to get, there has to be a high level of commitment. And you want to also check in with yourself, because you're also an energetic match to who you attract. So if you're not committed, you're not going to attract committed clients. This is something I learned from my mentor years ago, and it's so true. Like how we show up is the type of people that we attract, because it's our energy, right? So you want to really check in with your commitment and also define commitment for yourself. For me, commitment is, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to follow through. And one of the main trainings I have in my main 6-week super high performance formula is called integrity with self, and it's actually building that integrity muscle, right? So you also need to understand the people that come to you who are committed to the outcome that they want, because maybe they want to do tournaments, right? Maybe they're in that stage where they've done their initial sessions, right? They've learned the game, but now they actually want to start to be more confident playing with their friends and start to win more games. Well, there's a commitment to get there. And there's a fast track route, right? The more games you play, the more drills you play. They talk about the 80-20 principle, right? Of drilling versus rec games. But in order for someone to get to pro, for example, there has to be a commitment to pro. There's a mental decision. There's a mental decision of, I'm going to be pro. And then what happens is the action follows, and it's exactly the same for you growing and scaling your business. So how committed are you? Okay. Check in with your own commitment, and also it plays into your client commitment. The next one, accountability, which is one of my very loved topics. I wrote an article called The Navy SEALs of Personal Growth for entrepreneur.com, one of their most popular articles, and it talks about basically the neuroscience of commitment. And so commitment directly ties in with accountability, right? Because once you're committed, then the accountability can play a big role in someone getting to where they need to be. So what does it mean to hold someone accountable, right? So for me, it's about, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And then if not, there's a consequence. Now, as you're going through this home study, you're going to have a tracking form to fill in, right? At the end of today. I actually should have mentioned that in the first opening video. There's going to be a tracking form for you to fill in. And what that's doing is it's showing your commitment, but also giving you some accountability to fill that in so that you actually get to the end. So I was talking to one of my pickleball coach clients, and she said something very interesting yesterday, which was, I gave a client an exercise to do, but they didn't do it. And so for her, because I was also, coaching her around this too, which was, that also becomes a signal for whether you take somebody on or not, right? So commitment paired with accountability, right? Giving someone to do, we want to actually have them see that through. And if people don't, and most importantly, if they also repeat that behavior, because I really do feel like people should be given a chance, and that's the other thing which is worth mentioning in this training, which is excuses. Our own excuses and other people's excuses. Because again, if we don't check in with our own excuses, right, then what's going to happen is we're going to start to believe the excuses of others. But if we catch ourselves because we have a level of self-awareness and I was like, actually, I didn't do it, we get to take responsibility and we get to build in some accountability. So there's levels of accountability. For example, this is a self-study accountability. So there's a form, right? If I'm working with my clients, I've got my assistant that's checking forms, right? If something is not done, they're pulled up on it. The program's actually locked down. There's a whole locking system, which is actually part of the entrepreneur.com article, which is a 3-tiered locking system, because here's why. I noticed that people sign up for things, but they don't complete them. And so there's actually a low completion rate. I'm fully aware that there's going to be a number of people watching this series of videos and they're not going to do the work. I hope that that's not you. But what we can do is we can start to build things in to increase commitment, or ask questions to understand commitment, and also then to build in accountability, right? When you get really good at accountability, holding people accountable, giving them consequences, being willing to say the things that you feel because it's coming from a good place and call people out, you will get great results with your clients. They will respect you and they will hit a high level of performance, which means that you're going to get more referrals, right? Okay, let's move on. All fired up. What I'm going to talk about now. So I mentioned earlier that there is a separate training which you can go through. What that is I have a 6-week super high performance formula that I have clients go through. I've put lots of people through that. But what I did was I put together a 7-day process where there's meditations every day, there's additional mindset training, and there's other things to kind of break the mental cycle that we're in a lot of the time that stops us from moving forward in our business. Again, if you feel like it is a big component for you for the personal development side and you working on yourself before you're ready or you're getting paid, I'd highly recommend you go and check out that training in the Picklepreneurs community. Do that. It will be a great accompaniment to do while you're doing this 5-day challenge. It's 7 days of meditations, and they start off small, 5 minutes, and they move up to around 10 minutes. And in my other program, they move up to an hour in length over a 6-week period. So bear that in mind as you're moving forward. Okay, finally, stuck on court bookings. So before we go into the main training around pricing and positioning, a big issue, obviously, for a lot of pickleball coaches is, where do I coach my clients? So right now, you may be watching this because it's like, I know where I'm going to be coaching people, and I know the cost for a court or 2 courts, and I know the cost for 60 minutes or 90 minutes. Most likely it's an hour. I don't know the relationship that you've got. I'm really speaking to those that don't know yet, which is, it's going to be very easy to get stuck in this whole process if you don't know where you're working with people. Okay. So you want to look at, for example, you're going to know where the local pickleball courts are. For example, here in Coronado, I've got the Marriott, which I'm very fortunate to live next door to. I've also got a place called the Hub, which is in La Mesa, 15 minutes away. There's also a place called the Cays, which is 15 minutes away. There's lots of courts around and lots of options there to coach people. However, I'll give you another little secret. Within the apartment block that I'm living in, there is a pickleball court, and there's no cost for that. However, there's no booking system for it. So the point I want to make is, there's the courts that you will go onto Google to look at and be aware of, but there's also all of the other opportunities that aren't in your focus, which are there. And these would be residential places. These would actually be, for some people, people's homes. These would be courts that are currently being ported over from tennis courts to pickleball courts. This would be clubs that are currently being built. So, I just want to expand your mind a little bit beyond what is visible to you within Google and by search, and to actually, think about alternatives. Because I do know that for some people watching this, you're in an area where there actually isn't as much pickleball, or you have to travel for longer. But there could be an opportunity, and this is actually a great one to post in the community about, which is finding these kind of like other courts which are not as visible out there. Because being in this residential place with the pickleball court, it then makes me think about how many other locations there are. And wouldn't it be great if you could just go above Google Maps and suddenly just see all the courts, because they were zoned in? I think that'd be cool. But try to get clear as quickly as possible about where you're going to be coaching people, and the amount of the cost for the court time, and then the obviously the amount of time that you're going to be spending with people. I'm going to dive into this also as we go on in the trainings, but I did want to bring it up in the mindset piece, because there can be multiple blocks to someone growing their business. Sales is a massive one. I'll be covering sales, right? Marketing is a big one. Marketing yourself, putting yourself out there, that's a big block. Courts is a big one, right? So I'm going to be covering lots of different areas of mindset within the other trainings. But if you, in the next day or two, if you're not already clear on where you're going to be training people, then find out. And if not, go into some groups and get some connections on where other people are training other people. And hopefully that clarity can give you some confidence so that you can go and play there, rent the court, see what it's like, go and meet the people, build relationships, always good. But maybe there's also some opportunities that you're not aware of where you can add some value. Maybe there's some free courts. We never know. All right. I will see you in the next training where we're going to be covering pricing and positioning, and I'll see you there.